Trio for daring to cover the Bilderberg Group. It is getting crazy. And that's all coming up at the bottom of the hour. One of my favorite actors has died, Christopher Lee, just an amazing actor. Here's the headline. Christopher Lee, an actor of muscular intelligence with a staggering career. When Mr. Klayman leaves us, I'll talk some about that briefly. Larry Klayman, founder of Judicial Watch and Freedom Watch, is known for his strong public interest advocacy in furtherance of ethics in government and individual freedoms and liberties. During his tenure at Judicial Watch, he obtained a court ruling that Bill Clinton committed a crime, the first ever lawyer to have done so against an American president. Larry became so famous for fighting corruption in the government and for legal profession that NBC hit drama series West Wing created a character after him. His character was played by, and it just goes on, and I'm not going to break it all down, but freedomwatchusa.org, he's one of the most demonized people out there because the documents he gets, the research he does, is so amazingly piercing and accurate over and over again. We have now entered complete insane asylum level with this government and this Justice Department and their persecution of the Tea Party, veterans, gun owners, filmmakers like Dinesh D'Souza. I mean, they could indict a ham sandwich. Republicans are basically going along with all of it. At the leadership level, Paul Ryan won't even, he says the TPP is public, but then admits it isn't. Very Orwellian. But Mr. Klayman is on, as a WorldNet Daily article, 2 members of Supreme Court targeted by U.S. spies. There's been some leaks and a lot of speculation that the Supreme Court's sudden change towards, being pro-gun a few years ago to now ruling against guns just last week in a San Francisco case really illustrates that they're being blackmailed. And see, that's the problem with having a compromised president or anybody. They can be blackmailed. Look at Dennis Hastert. And so he's got some amazing information on this and other scandals. But if anybody can bring out the scandals that can maybe stop these people, it's Larry Klayman. But first, let me thank him for coming on and thank our listeners for supporting him and his important work and supporting one of the bravest people out there. But the overall climate, is Obama in trouble? Is he backing off? Is he more emboldened? He seems to be more emboldened, but everything he does falls apart. Kicking out our allies in Egypt, putting basically Al-Qaeda in, caught running ISIS. I mean, it's so villainous, Larry Klayman, that I can't even believe it. I mean, he makes Bill Clinton look like an angel cake. And I know the Clintons kind of run Obama to a certain extent. What is going on? I mean, what's next? What's the next shoe to drop, Larry Klayman?
Well, backing up, Alex, you're absolutely right. I mean, we live in an age, not just the degradation of society, but the people who are running this country have not served this country. In fact, they've behaved in the case of Obama, in a traitorous way. We are really up against the wall internationally in what's happening, particularly in the Middle East with ISIS and Israel and the efforts to destroy Israel's ability to be our major ally there. Domestically, we're pushing towards a socialized economy. We're already there. And we've got all these scandals on top of everything else. And one of the biggest scandals, of course, over the last few years has been the NSA scandal. You alluded to that in the beginning of your introduction, where the NSA and other intelligence agencies have access to all of our telephonic metadata, to our internet communications, to our social media contacts, and they have the ability to blackmail almost anybody they want. The reality here is that these agencies are in control of this country. Somebody may be behind them. But Obama, they let him do his little socialist thing and do whatever he can to destroy Israel and further Muslim interests in the Middle East. But they're playing a much bigger game here. And sometimes they likely return favors to each other. And that may help explain some of the bizarre Supreme Court decisions we've had and other kinds of rulings. We do know, and it's a matter of public record, that the intelligence agencies have actually penetrated the email and telephone communications of even judges in this country, and representatives and senators. So we live in an Orwellian state. Judge Richard Leon made that finding on December 16, 2013, when he enjoined the NSA
Yeah, by the way, I should have added that you had one of the first and only victories against the NSA in a case you brought and argued. So I also forgot to add that you're a top constitutional lawyer. Sorry.
Thanks, Alex. And that's the stakes that we have here. We're living under the sword of Damocles. It's ironic that we have this issue in Syria. That's where it came from. And if you step out of line, if you criticize the government, if you take strong action, the government wants you to know that they can retaliate and destroy you.
And all we're trying to do, cut and dry, is save the country. No one can debate shutting down our power plants will bankrupt us. No one can debate opening our borders outside of law and saying everything's free will bankrupt us. No one can debate the war on families is happening. I mean, it's like we have Hugo Chavez on acid running the country.
You're right. Now, you know, there are good people in government, but they're not the people in control. And if there are good people in government, and I know a few, you have to work with them to try to change things. And we've had good judges over the years, a couple of them. Judge Richard
there are a lot of good people. So, I mean, what percentage would you say are good side, bad side?
Well, I would say 90% are bad, at least. Probably that's the conservative figure. Either bad in the sense that they're acting in a malevolent way for their own interests, like, you know, McConnell, Senator Majority Leader McConnell in the Senate. He lines his pockets along with Karl Rove on the Republican side. And on the Democrat side, you have Nancy Pelosi and company lining their pockets. So the bottom line is that we don't really have any representation in Washington, and that's why I have to do what I do in my little way at Freedom Watch, and before that at Judicial Watch, and you do what you do, Alex, because we have to wage a peaceful new American revolution here, and we have to put our foot down. And whatever it takes to do that, whether it's bringing lawsuits against the NSA or bringing lawsuits, racketeering lawsuits against Hillary Clinton for selling waivers to Iran in exchange for contributions to the Clinton Foundation. I have a case down in Southern District of Florida right now.
I'm no constitutional lawyer, but being in the State Department, taking money from foreign states to then unblock weapons transfers to ship weapons, I mean, that sounds like a James Bond villain.
It does. And challenging him on immigration, I have a case for Sheriff Joe Arpaio and his executive orders. It's in the District of Columbia. We also intervened in the Texas case by filing the amicus briefs. We have to cover the waterfront. We have to use whatever tools we have. Because with this power of these intelligence agencies to intercept our telephone messages, our email communications, our social media contacts, our founding fathers, if they had lived under this, in 1776, if George III, I'm not talking about Bush, I'm talking about King George III, had these powers, they wouldn't have made it to Philadelphia. They would have been picked up, arrested, and executed before they got there. So it's almost impossible to wage a revolution today like our founding fathers did. We have to use whatever means we can. Peaceful nonviolence, a la Martin Luther King, a la Nelson Mandela, a la Lech Walesa in Poland, and use our legal system and hope that we find those good judges and others who will put their foot forward. That's what we have.
Well, you're involved in so many trailblazing things, but let's get into 2 members of Supreme Court targeted by U.S. spies. Tell us about that, Larry Klayman.
Well, we don't know much about that. All we know is that the intelligence agencies have been getting into their records. I don't know for a fact whether they've been blackmailed or not, but the potential is there. And when you see the decision at the end of the Obamacare analysis a few years back, where the Chief Justice all of a sudden flipped at the end, and in fact his decision was incomprehensible. First he says it isn't a tax, the Obamacare, and then he says it is, and he sustains it as Congress's power to tax. You have to really wonder what's going on. And that's why it's good to expose these things, because, you know, fundamentally, the Chief Justice, I hope this time he rules differently, but he has not played it straight. And that destroys confidence in our court system.
It sure did. I mean, anybody knows Obamacare is not constitutional. It's not enforced universally. The whole thing's a fraud. They change it all the time. I mean, it's just a monstrosity.
Absolutely. And, you know, a number of other decisions coming out of the courts, you know, sustaining things that just simply are not sustainable. Whether you're for gay marriage or not, it's the right of the states. And we're going to see what comes out of the Supreme Court on that one, too. That's a highly volatile decision. That should be made on the state level, whether you agree with it or not. Immigration law. The president said he's not an emperor, yet he puts it into effect. Our Congress cowers away and does nothing. Our Congress should be submitting articles of impeachment right now to get this guy out of there, but no, they're playing games because they're hoping that maybe they'll win the next presidential election. But by that time, Alex, 18 months down the line, our country could be destroyed. I mean, we're already on the ropes. We're already close to destruction. So what are we going to do? And that's the question that you pose and I pose. And I'm doing what I can in the courts, but the American people need to rise up, and they need to tell their representatives, ship up or ship out.
Well, they need to support freedomwatchusa.org. I know you didn't come on to ask for donations or support. Folks better pray for you. No one is more aggressive and bold. Probably 60% of the good lawsuits out there are coming from you. We used to have Greg Abbott, before he was governor, suing the feds. He's still doing it. He's good. But, man, we need to fight this any way we can. Larry Klayman, freedomwatchusa.org, is our guest. I want to come back and ask him what else he's looking at, what concerns him most, and any positive news he's got for us. But the most positive thing is at least we know we're in deep trouble. We're not asleep. So we're not here trying to scare you, folks. We're here telling you the house is on fire. We have some really deviant people running the country right now. One against the NSA, one of the major cases out there. The media really hated that a few years ago. And now he's moving forward with other cases. In the 5-6 minutes we've got left, Mr. Klayman, what's the good news, A? B, what else are you most concerned about right now? Tell us about some of the other actions you're involved in. We may have lost his audio. We've had some issues with the board today. So we'll figure out what's happening with that audio and try to get him back up here in just a moment. Speaking of tyranny, this article really makes my head spin. 11-year-old boy kidnapped by CPS. Parents arrested after he played in backyard alone for 90 minutes. A couple in Florida were arrested and charged with felony neglect after their 11-year-old son was left alone in the backyard playing basketball for 90 minutes. They ought to be given a medal that he wasn't playing video games. Furthermore, the child was taken from the parents and placed into foster care. The remarkable story was related to the website Free Range Kids, which advocates raising children to be self-reliant. Yeah, we got to get that lady back on. Rather than succumbing to the nanny state, I guess, TV coffins that they place people in now. You know, first it was 7-year-olds, then 8-year-olds, then 9-year-olds, then 10-year-olds. I mean, 11-year-old in their backyard. I mean, when I was 11, I would walk, sometimes if my parents weren't home or weren't giving me a ride, 5 miles to a pool party. You know, there were cheerleaders there, literally, or whatever. And then somebody give me a ride back. Or sometimes I couldn't get a ride back, and I remember I'd walk because there was a railroad track that would run right into town that was quicker than taking the roads, and I could walk into a whole bunch of the neighborhoods that were there. I mean, I'd walk sometimes 6-7 miles, and then I'd be like, 12, 13 years old, and then I'd call back from whoever's house I was at, and I'd say, Dad, you want to come pick me up? And he usually would say, yeah, sure. Sometimes he'd say, hey, I told you I'm at a business meeting and your mom's out of town. You're going to have to just walk back. And I remember walking back sometimes. It'd be, 10 at night by the time I got home. It was awesome. Railroad tracks at night, owls flying by. Because we lived out on the edge of Dallas, so it was like countryside. Now it's all skyscrapers where I grew up or big buildings, but it was countryside part of it. And, that was normal for my dad because he used to get sent places to work during the summer, an apprentice at oil refinery, at a steel mill, at different things, just to have the experience. He wasn't child labor. They would just send him to get different experiences so that he wouldn't be a moron. But instead now, keep your children inside watching television all day, and if they go in the backyard and play basketball, we're going to take them. The boy found himself locked out of the family home in April after his parents became stuck in traffic. Boy, does that happen all the time. A busybody neighbor decided that this was far too dangerous and called the cops. When the parents arrived home, they were put in handcuffs, strip searched, fingerprinted, and subsequently held overnight in jail. Meanwhile, the boy and his 4-year-old brother who was not left alone at the time, were taken into the custody of police and handed to a relative. It emerged that for 48 hours while the handover was being sorted out, the children were only fed cereal and were not encouraged to wash. Well, of course.